On Professor Charles Parry, Director of the Alcohol, Tobacco and Other Drug Research Unit at the South African Medical Research Council, joins us now, as well as Kurt Moore, CEO of the South African Liquor Brand Owners Association. The President tonight announcing measures to be taken to also assist those sectors which have been affected by the lockdown in the past 28 days. But Kurt, of course, get me your reaction first as far as the opening is concerned. Of course, the curfew still remains in place and the days of trade are limited. However, retail outlets now can be able to trade. How significant is this, particularly at this time coming out of the unrest?
Hello, good evening, and thank you for having me on your show. Yeah, I think we welcome the effort made by the President today to lift the restrictions on trade. We think it's a step in the right direction. Look, I listened to the President. I didn't have a chance to listen to his entire speech, but he spoke about reconstruction and recovery of the economy and support for affected businesses. You've alluded to some support in the form of excise relief. But a little over 2 weeks ago, the President spoke about business relief or relief for businesses who have to apply for licenses. And that statement was made immediately after talking about alcohol. So everybody assumed that alcohol will be getting that relief, the small businesses, but that actually did not materialize. We contacted the National Liquor Authority. They looked at the regulations. Well, first of all, they said we first need to find out. So there's actually no pre-planning for this. And then they came back to us and said, well, liquor doesn't qualify. We're 4 weeks into the ban. We've asked 4 weeks ago for excise relief. It only gets announced today. There's many companies who had to pay this year this past month, because if you don't pay, you're deemed to be delinquent, and if you're delinquent, you're not entitled to other support measures. That's the type of stop-start approach that's been made, and there seemingly is nobody out there that's willing to support the alcohol industry, on the basis that we'll just bounce back from this, which is clearly not the case. Those people that have lost their businesses in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, those businesses have to be reconstructed. And the only way to do that is to allow them to trade, because the support from government, unfortunately, is not always there.
I don't know if you would have these figures at hand, Kurt, of the number of businesses that could have been affected that were uninsured. An announcement made tonight by the President that those businesses will not be abandoned, but government has set aside some dedicated fund which is going to be announced in a short while.
Unfortunately not, Thabo. I don't know how many of those businesses were not insured, but our information is that 230 alcohol sites in KZN and Gauteng were looted, vandalized, and burnt. But of those 230, how many did not have insurance? I'm unable to share that information with you.
Prof. Parry, let's talk then about this lifting on the alcohol sale for on-site as well as off-site consumption, and the likely impact that it is going to have, seeing that, of course, 20% of drop in infections is what we have seen. However, the President warning that we are seeing some increase of daily new cases in the Western Cape, KZN, the Eastern Cape, even the Northern Cape.
Yes, certainly the ban, which was implemented 28 days ago, there was an effect, a positive effect in terms of reducing the trauma. If you look at Western Cape data, in the first week after the ban took place, there was a 25% drop in the 17 emergency centers and a 34% over weekends. But that's been going on for 4 weeks, and the hospitalizations are starting to level off, as has been said, and certainly I think it does make sense to loosen the restrictions, and the off consumption restrictions certainly made a lot of sense to me. I was a little surprised by the decision to move so quickly ahead with opening up on consumption sales, given that there's also a risk of increasing spread of the virus in environments where people are drinking, but there's a 50-person limit on such establishments. So I think it can be defended. But I think I was also surprised looking forward. I think a ban cannot continue forever, and it was time to lift the ban. But I think we need to have a conversation about how do we address the problem we have with heavy drinking going forward, so we don't have to have this sort of fairly blunt instrument imposed whenever there's a wave of the coronavirus, and rather we should be talking now about implementing steps to address heavy drinking so that we deal with those parts of the trade that are linked to heavy alcohol consumption, and other parts can function more normally. So I think the decision did make sense on many levels, but I think I would have liked to have seen a stronger statement going forward, that we're not just going to have this repeating itself, that we're going to actually address the underlying drivers of heavy drinking in our society.
Kurt, surely the start-stop is not good for the sector, and the issue that Professor Parry is raising certainly is a conversation that needs to be had, because once again we will see numbers beginning to rise, and if they rise, the hospitals become overburdened. The president will come again and announce that the alcohol sector will have to be banned. Surely there needs to be a more long-term conversation and a clear plan as how we're going to deal with that.
Absolutely, yeah. Look, I think let's first start with the first issue of stop-start. I mean, yeah, that doesn't help us. I think from an industry perspective, we'd like to know at what point does government consider tightening up the economy, and at what point does government start to open up the economy. We can't sit and wait for the president to speak. We should know at what point do we open up and what point do we restrict. Over this weekend, the Department of Education was meeting with schools to talk about what happens Monday. We have to wait till 8:30. We have staff who may have gone home for the last 2 weeks because they weren't working. And how do you bring back that staff? So, and we asked over this weekend when we were engaging with government, please, it can be held under embargo, but just let us know what's going to happen on Monday. We got no answers. So that's very difficult to manage that situation. Now, talking and going forward, I agree with Prof. Parry. The ban is a blunt instrument. What it tends to do, both bans as well as increases in taxes, etc., they tend to have a greater impact on those people who do not abuse alcohol and who are moderate drinkers. Because the guys who are drinking excessively will find that alcohol somewhere on the market. Illegally, they will get their hands on it. So these instruments are blunt. And we have to find some better ways to address that. We've engaged with government through NEDLAC on a social compact, and we're saying to government, look, there's a role for industry to be played. Remember, there are institutions who are arguing around the health arguments that say industry should not be part of this conversation. And I can't understand how they can adopt such approach, because if we're not part of those conversations, we're not going to come up with real solutions. Now, we've gone to government, for example, we said AECs, alcohol evidence centers, to help to deal with drinking and driving. Industry can and will make contributions to setting up these AECs so that we can have more AECs alongside the roads, and that the police can start having more roadblocks, have tests available faster, and we can prosecute, and so that can act as a deterrent to people. Now, when we enter into a social compact, all that the industry can do is provide the AEC centers. It's government's role to have roadblocks. It's government's role to start prosecuting those and prosecuting them soon, not having cases run for 2 to 3 years. So if we can start entering into the social compacts and targeting those individuals who are the cause of the problems, I think we'll start to see much better results than these blunt instruments that's often been proposed and implemented by government.
Prof. Parry, are we making a mistake by leaving industry out when we are having these social compact conversations?
Well, look, I think industry has a role to play, but I think we also need to look at industry's role in driving or supporting heavy alcohol consumption in this country. I think the industry would struggle if South Africa is the 6th highest country in the world in terms of the amount of alcohol consumed per drinker per day. And I think if there wasn't heavy drinking in the country, there are large parts of the liquor sector that would struggle to exist and to make their profits. So the industry does benefit, unfortunately, from the culture of heavy drinking in society. So some of the solutions are going to be uncomfortable for industry. And I think we found in the past that industry has blocked some of the strategies that have been put on the table. So we need to look at things like container sizes, which have been shown to be linked to heavy drinking. We need to look at pricing. There are parts of the liquor trade, particularly selling cheap wine, bag-in-box wine for under 3, 4, 5 rand a standard drink, very cheaply. That's part of the problem. And we need to look at the marketing, and we need to look at where alcohol is placed. There are liquor stores at petrol stations. Do we need such things? Do we need billboards near schools? So I think obviously there has to be a dialogue with industry. Government has really, for the last 25 years that I've been involved, has not done enough to step up to the plate to do its job of enforcing regulations, of dealing with legislation. We have a whole realm of legislation that is currently stalled. We have the 2013 Control of Marketing of Alcohol Beverages Bill, which went nowhere, although Cabinet approved it. We have the 2016-17 Liquor Amendment Bill with DTI, which has gone nowhere. Lucky also criticized Minister Patel. Where is that legislation? We have the 2016 Liquor Products Amendment Bill, which went last year to the National Council of Traditional Leaders, and is still nowhere. We have the Road Traffic Amendment Bill of 2015, which was approved by Cabinet in March last year. Where is that going? So government really has not played its role, and I think we can also say that while industry has put on some table things around fetal alcohol syndrome and drink driving, I think there's a lot of things that industry could do better to look at some of the drivers, the cheap pricing I talked about, the cheap wine, the marketing of alcohol and things like that.
Prof. Parry, I appreciate your time. And Kurt Moore, thank you very much for joining us tonight on In Focus.